Brothers and sisters, the following video is part of our ongoing political education process to ensure that you, our members, have every bit of information you need to make an informed decision on who you'll support for President of the United States. As your union, we're not going to tell you how to vote, but we hope to be a resource to help you make an informed decision on who to support. There are a number of candidates on both sides of the political aisle running for the highest office in our nation. Our job is to inform you on their positions, on the issues important to our profession and you as firefighters. In the 2008 presidential race, one candidate is running on what he perceives as his 9/11 credentials. Rudy Giuliani has used the horrible events of September 11, 2001 to create a carefully crafted persona. But the fact is, what Rudy portrays is not a full picture of the decisions made that led, in our view, to the unnecessary deaths of our FDNY members and the attempt to stop the dignified recovery of those lost. The urban legend of America's mayor needs to be balanced by the truth. The opinions in this video are not about Rudy's record on union issues, as some on his behalf have portrayed. The stories you are about to hear are not being delivered by an arm or extension of any political party. These are the unvarnished stories of firefighters, fire officers, active and retired, and the families of our FDNY members who served and sacrificed that horrible day. They paint a picture of Rudy that is remarkably different than the one he has painted for himself. Firefighters, their families, and this IAFF have an important story to tell you, and it's time to tell it.
One of the towers has collapsed. I repeat, one of the towers has collapsed.
He's running on his 9/11 leadership, and there was lacking and there was none.
Whenever I hear him talk, I want to scream out to the world and say, God, he's so full of it.
The buck stops at the mayor's office.
It goes up to the top. You know, who's in charge here?
Mr. Giuliani.
They attacked us in '93.
And yet 8.5 years later, New York City Firefighters, the greatest fire department in the world, we're using the same radios that we knew didn't work.
We have remains of dead heroes out at the garbage dump because of Giuliani and his administration. And they're still there today, and they won't remove them.
And this guy had politics and his image much more important than the needs of firefighters and their families.
I'm a conservative. I'm a member of the NRA. I voted for Giuliani. But in this instance, he messed up.
It's about learning who the person running for president is. Don't just go by the image you saw on television.
It's not the moral, ethical, or honest person that I feel should be the President of the United States in 2008.
This image of Rudy Giuliani as America's mayor is a myth.
Rudy Giuliani's urban legend begins on February 26, 1993, when al-Qaeda terrorists bombed the World Trade Center.
It looked like a scene from a Hollywood movie, but it was real.
Move back, sir. Over here.
I tried to get on radio to transmit to the chief. This is very important stuff. I couldn't get out. I'm calling anybody that could hear me. Nobody responded.
A 1994 report confirmed the radios didn't work, and Mayor Giuliani knew it. Yet Rudy and his hand-picked fire commissioner took 7 long years to replace the defective radios with new defective radios.
This was the first time that I used the new radios that we were issued, and it was at a working fire. At some point in the fire, the second due engine company, who was engine 305, a member on that line was separated from his line, and he transmitted a Mayday message for a member lost.
You know, a guy caught in a cellar of a private house, and he's calling for help, or giving a mayday, and the units that are in the immediate area don't hear him, but yet units that are 2 miles away hear him. Something definitely wrong with that.
Rudy's radios were pulled from service within a week. The city comptroller found that proper testing procedures were never followed, and that competitive bidding standards were circumvented with a no-bid contract.
He ordered them bogusly. He's supposed to go out to bid. They're supposed to be tested by the field units, and then they're supposed to give him their input into it. And if they think the radio is good, they would buy it. He didn't do that.
You'd have to see how it works in a high-rise, how it works in a tenement, how it works in a cellar, subcellar, in tunnels. It would be tested in all these various areas. My estimation, what happened in 2000, 2001, none of that went on.
At 9:32 a.m. on September 11th, Chief Callan ordered all FDNY members in the North Tower to the lobby. He repeated the command, but not a single company answered. At 9:59, the South Tower collapsed.
Chief Brown, Mayday, Liberty and West, I'm trapped in the rubble.
FDNY's Chief Pfeiffer then repeated the order for all units to evacuate the North Tower. Firefighters had 56 minutes after the first call and 29 minutes after the second order to get out. While all police officers left the building, 121 firefighters never made it out.
That day, my son was working, and they didn't hear the call. 121 guys didn't hear the call in the North Tower to get out. And the police officers heard it because their radios worked, and ours didn't.
The South Tower came down in less than an hour, and that was the point when the fire department had to say, hey, it's time to get out. They had 29 more minutes to get out of the North Tower. We lost those people for what reason? Because of lack of communication. Not a single cop was lost in that building. Why was that? Because they had gotten the word to get out. Our radios weren't working.
Virtually, the whole thing goes back to him with the radios. He's the guy on the top, and he's the guy you yell at. He takes the hit. And my son is dead because of it.
That's what firefighters should remember about Rudy Giuliani. He gave us nothing when we needed a life-saving radio.
Rather than take responsibility, Giuliani tried to blame the victims, telling the 9/11 Commission that firefighters heard their evacuation orders, but disobeyed them.
Their willingness, the way I describe it, to stand their ground.
I find that despicable. My son was a Marine. If he had heard the order to evacuate, which he did not because the radios weren't working, if he had heard the order to evacuate, he would have evacuated.
That is the most ludicrous statement that I've heard made by some people, that the firefighters disagreed or ignored the command.
Mayor Giuliani twisted the heroism of my brother to suit his own mistakes of that day.
The mayor who's claiming to run on 9/11 built his OEM center, his communication center, the basis for all decisions to be made on the site of the World Trade Center that had been attacked just 8 years earlier.
I mean, he's the one that made the decision to put their bunker in 7 World Trade Center, which when I was down there on 9/11 that day, I've seen police detectives yelling in the streets that we told him not to put it here, you know, because that was the target of the terrorists.
7 World Trade Center collapsed at 5 o'clock that night, and the Emergency Command Center was never used that day.
Mayor Giuliani was running on the street, and he was talking to the media instead of being in a controlled environment making controlled decisions.
Can't go to city. Why?
Here is the leader of the city running away from the scene, leaving uniformed personnel from fire and police to deal with this tragic situation that was occurring.
Firefighters began the difficult task of respectfully recovering the remains of civilians and their fallen brothers. But then gold belonging to the Bank of Nova Scotia was found and removed.
Rinks truck spotted at the site. Is that the $200 million in gold?
Yes, it is. I think we have most of it. I'm not sure we have all of it yet.
Within hours of announcing that the gold had been recovered, Rudy pulled FDNY members off the pile, claiming he was worried about their safety.
They found the gold, and all of a sudden, everything changed for Rudy Giuliani. Things didn't change for firefighters, but they changed for Rudy Giuliani and said, don't worry, firefighters will believe whatever I tell them. It's about your safety. We knew it wasn't. We knew it was a lie.
Once the gold was found, they didn't really care about our membership, that they were going to take our dead members and put them in the Staten Island dump was a disgrace. It really was.
When Rudy started his scoop and dump operation, just 101 FDNY members had been recovered. 242 FDNY members and hundreds of civilians would either stay buried at Ground Zero or be removed like garbage and deposited at the Fresh Kills landfill.
Scoop up the debris, dump it in a landfill. The heck with the fact that it was firefighters or others who would never have a funeral for their family.
Families and off-duty firefighters protested Rudy's appalling lack of respect. In response, Giuliani had them arrested. When faced with the public outrage, Mayor Giuliani relented and let FDNY members go back to work on the pile.
I lost my son. He was in the Marriott. He was lost when the South Tower came down.
We found my son on March 25th, 2002, and if Giuliani had his way, my son's body would have never been recovered because he would have closed the site in November because of money and politics, and he wanted the firemen out of there so they could speed up the operation.
Remains were found, and it was a real relief to find those, to know, that he wasn't left down there and that he did come home to rest.
We have no idea how he died in the towers. We haven't recovered his remains, so we don't have any information.
Today, we still continue to find remains.
We did need radios that worked, we didn't have them. We did need proper respiratory protection, he didn't give it to us. The things that we needed to do our job even better, we didn't have because of his administration.
So ultimately, the mayor of New York at the time, Mr. Giuliani, he has to bear these responsibilities.
And I blame Giuliani. He was the leader that day. And he was the leader for the 8 years leading up to that.
I wish I could put him on the stand where he'd have to put his hand on the Bible and swear to tell the truth.
He's not a leader. He's running on 9/11, and it's all a fallacy.
That's what this is all about. It's the truth of what he did.
And he's making millions, tens of millions of dollars on the backs of my members, as far as I'm concerned.
If you're looking for an effective leader to take this country further, Rudy Giuliani is not to be your choice.
On the heroic memory of 343 dead firefighters, he wants to run for president of the United States. It's a disgrace.